One of the things that I have found fascinating and interesting for a very long time has been the relationship between certain human attributes with others. And one of the more interesting ones, one that is sometimes talked about, is the notion of intelligent people being more attractive on average. And having looked into this, there's some evidence for this, although it is hardly rock solid, and I've not seen it replicated to date. That is to say that most of the evidence is quite old, and I'm not sure it's actually true. For example, it could be the halo effect interfering with people's perception of intelligence, although these studies would claim otherwise. And more to the point, very anecdotally, if you look at the world around you, you will see that some of the smartest people are typically not exactly the most attractive people. And we'll get into that in a bit. But I think ultimately, inasmuch as this is probably not entirely true, if you think about there's similar such claims made about intelligent people more generally. For example, that intelligent people are more likely to get depressed than unintelligent people. Well, I've definitely looked into this one, and I'm pretty sure the answer to this question of do intelligent people get more depressed than less intelligent people on average, and the answer to that is no. It's just that it seems that way because the problems that intelligent people get depressed about are different from the problems that unintelligent people get depressed about. But both intelligent people and unintelligent people are more or less equally susceptible to depression. But this is one of those internet myths that's taken on a life of its own, and so people will constantly say the downside, allegedly, of being really smart is you're more likely to get depressed, even though there's no concrete evidence for this. And if there is a correlation between looks and intelligence, it's pretty small. And what I think, based on anecdotal evidence, because this has not been well studied, is that when you get into the highest echelons of cognition and professions that require truly impressive cognition, like astrophysics, neuroscience, and these sorts of things, you will see that basically no one who pursues these studies is particularly attractive. They might be average looking, but the vast majority of them are not Chads and Stacys, which I would argue is a selection effect. That all things being balanced, people who are attractive might, in theory, be a little bit more intelligent than average, even though I'm very skeptical of that claim. But it's very unlikely they're going to be supremely intelligent. Because here, and this is my own theory, my belief that there's basically an inverse correlation between the most extreme forms of intelligence and the most extreme forms of beauty. In my view, you cannot have the most extreme forms of beauty with the most extreme forms of intelligence. Now, there have never been studies on this, but I think there's evidence that you can draw simply from observing the world, how it works, who does what, and what professions they pursue. So I wanted to address that at the get-go. But this video, as you can see, is in part about Dolph Lundgren, and more importantly about a general principle. You see, Dolph Lundgren in his prime, as you can see, was a very attractive man. But rather rarely, he was also very intelligent. In fact, he was so intelligent that he got a scholarship to attend MIT in the early 80s. MIT being one of the most prestigious technical universities in the world, as you probably know, which he rejected. So let's listen to this first. He was qualified to become a chemical engineer, which is a very demanding field, as you might imagine. But here's the kicker. Lundgren was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to MIT in 1983. However, while preparing for the move to Boston, he was spotted in the nightclub where he worked in Sydney and was hired by Grace Jones as a bodyguard, and the two became lovers. He moved with Jones to New York City, where he dabbled in modeling at the Zoli agency, but was described as a bit too tall and muscular for a model size 40. He earned a living as a bouncer at the Manhattan nightclub Limelight. In the daytime, he studied drama at the Warren Robertson Theater Workshop, and has said that my time in New York City opened up the adolescent Swedish eyes to a multitude of different peoples and lifestyles, mostly in the arts. I hung out with Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, Imam and Steve Rubble, danced at Studio 54, and studied acting with Andy McDowell and Tom Hulse. Friends told him he should be in movies. He would later quit studying at MIT. After 2 weeks to pursue acting. Lundgren said that after being exposed to the entertainment business, he found it more attractive and rewarding than chemical engineering, so he decided to pursue a career in acting. Notice that final statement that he made. He found it more attractive and rewarding than chemical engineering. Now, clearly, Dolph Lundgren was in his prime an exceptionally good-looking man, and he clearly was very intelligent, because No chemical engineer can be dumb. We know this. Quite the opposite, they have to be very bright. So bright he was that he could have studied at MIT on a full scholarship, one of the most prestigious technical universities in the whole world. And he threw it all away to become an actor because it was more rewarding and more attractive. So really what this video is about is breaking down notions of effort with respect to reward. People love to praise effort, but the reality is that most human beings, if they can take a shortcut, if they can avoid putting in effort, will. It's just that very often, effort is required to attain things. You can't go to the gym once and build a great physique. It takes years and years, and you also need the requisite genetics. And some people, for example, do try to take shortcuts with steroids or what have you, but they're not really shortcuts because they still require work and they still require the genetics in order to grow properly. But imagine a hypothetical scenario where all that was needed in order to develop a great physique would be to swallow one pill in the morning. You wake up, you swallow the pill, and then over the course of a few weeks, you develop a truly impressive physique with no effort. How many people out there would take that option over the option of going to the gym? Now, I admit that some people would, of course, still go to the gym just because they like the process or the mentality, but the vast majority of people, I submit to you, who are ultimately looking to attain a great physique would take that pill. And in some sense, that's what Dolph Lundgren did as well. The guy was very good looking, also very smart, but you see, the path of least resistance offered greater rewards, and ultimately, his looks were more beneficial in bringing him status and rewards, as he himself says, than his brain with respect to chemical engineering. And my point here is that most people are like that. Most people will forego effort if they don't need to put in the effort if there are better options available. So with the example of Dolph Lundgren and this observation of effort with respect to reward, let's get back to my earlier observation, my own theory. There's actually an inverse relationship between the most attractive people and the most intelligent people. As I said, notice how the most intelligent people, the people who pursue the things that are hardest, theoretical physics, astrophysics, academic level mathematics, etc., that virtually none of them are very attractive. They might be average or they might be below average, but they're rarely very attractive. And generally speaking, successful academicians, that is, people who pursue academic careers and strive hard to achieve their goals, are also not typically very attractive. Because here's the thing, they intuit on a subconscious level that this effort is required in order for them to gain rewards and status. However, I submit to you again that if a 5 on the look scale guy who's studying to become an astrophysicist happened to be an 8.5 on the look scale years prior, despite possessing great intelligence, it's very likely that he would forego the path of physics in order to pursue something more accessible associated with his looks, immediate gratification, etc., etc. And so you can see, although intelligence is important, if you have the looks, you're much more likely to take advantage of those looks. Hence why you can observe in general in the world that attractive people, specifically attractive women, rarely have to do anything, and even if they are intelligent, don't necessarily need to develop that intelligence or work with that intelligence because they get everything handed to them on a silver platter. It's not as quite as extreme for guys, although it's certainly similar, assuming they're very attractive. So the reality is that despite all of our lamentations about people's lack of work ethic, or their lack of motivation, or very simply put, their lack of effort, most of us would forego effort for reward if that were an option. It's just that in most cases, if you're not super attractive, for example, you have to put in effort and work at other things in order to gain some modicum of success. But the reality is that if we could achieve status and rewards and other benefits with very little work simply by existing, that's what we're going to do. A prime example of this, of course, is the well-known 21st century philosopher, poet, and thinker, Jeremy Meeks, who's a primary example of somebody who exerted himself minimally but got arguably maximal rewards. And most of us, if we had those options, would go down that route. This is why only frauds exist. This is why those TikTok clips of women who are half naked also exist, because it is easy to do, it doesn't require a lot of effort, and that's what we're primed for. We are status-chasing machines who also seek to minimize the amount of effort required in order to achieve said status. And so ultimately, what effort is is the leftovers left to people who don't have better options in life. Effort is the thing that you have to do, because if you don't do it, you won't be able to achieve anything. But if you didn't need to make an effort, you sure as hell probably wouldn't make an effort, just like the great philosopher, poet, and thinker Jeremy Meeks. Or in the case of Dolph Lundgren, he had to make less of an effort in his acting career than the rigorous pursuit of chemical engineering at MIT. So it really begs the question what all of those PhDs, doctors, scientists, engineers would do if they had actually been really good looking. And I think the evidence suggests that they probably wouldn't have become doctors, lawyers, PhDs, engineers, and all the rest. Because we see what happens when your good looks can get you somewhere in life. And typically, those looks will trump any effort that you need to make in order to achieve status elsewhere. And we see that very clearly in the case of Dolph Lundgren. Anyways, as always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons. You guys are the best. You keep the channel alive. The same thanks goes to my donors on PayPal. Without you guys, the channel would cease to exist. And as for everyone else, if you can like the video, share the video, leave a comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, which allegedly helps the channel, be much appreciative of it. Until the next time, may the gods watch over you. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out then. Take care for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.